Most of you join. Have you joined? You can join. Yes. Okay, let's just wait till 400 dots. Just 1 minute time. Hello and welcome. Is please. Must mute yourself. Hello and welcome. It is 4 o'clock and we are about to get started. Let's get started immediately. I'm going to share my screen so that we can start. Yes, my screen is coming up and I hope everybody is connected. Let's start. Today we are going to be looking at class and objects. We are going to be looking at object-oriented programming. That's what we're going to be looking at today. Object-oriented programming. When you are in the software world, you're always going to hear about object-oriented programming. It's one of the programming paradigms that you can use, and it's the most effective. We have what we call functional programming, and we have other forms. Object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming is the best form, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. And to do this, I'm going to quickly hover over my folder, which is Python tutorial. You can see it on the left-hand corner, left-hand pane for the Explorer. So I'll click on it. And I'm going to type in OOP.py. Or do I call it object.py or class.py? Okay, let me just call it class object dot
Sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. Is it not better as object-oriented programming so that it's just the abbreviation of the definition? It's easier, I guess, sir.
Okay, so I should use OOP.py.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, OOP.py. That is what we are 7 days with, object-oriented programming .py. Are we good?
Yes, sir. Very well, sir.
Okay. So that's what we'll be looking at today. So how do you understand this? A class in any object-oriented programming language like Python or Java or C++, a class is a blueprint for creating objects. So if you want to create objects, you have to have a class that shows the properties and functions of that object. Object is anything, any program, any software, anything that you can create as a software that has properties and functions. And functions, we've already learned what it is. Properties are just variable declarations telling us more about the very object that you're looking at. So let's take an example of an object. Human being is the class, but Augustine is the object of that class, human being. Is that clear? What are the properties of Augustine? My height, you can say that my height is 7.6, you understand? My mouth, things you can see around me, you understand? All those things are my properties. My height, my age, you understand? So when I declare all those as a variable, they are my properties. Then what are my functions? Teach. As I'm teaching you now, it's one of my functions. Is that clear? What other function? If I dance, that's a function. But what's the relationship between the properties and the function? For you to perform the function, you have to use the properties, isn't it? One of my function is seeing and my ability to see. Which property do I use in seeing? My eyes. Can you see that? So in writing a function that is inside a class or inside the property, write the function, and the functions, what will function as the argument for the function that you'll be writing are the what? Properties. Use the properties to perform the function. Are we clear on this? So let's get down the lane and let's start immediately. So simply say that in JavaScript or in Python, sorry, I'm saying JavaScript because I'm also a big fan of JavaScript. Don't mind me. Don't mind me. When you hear me say JavaScript, because I've been doing JavaScript for a very long time as well. So don't mind me. So I can simply say that a class is a blueprint. That's what a class is, a blueprint. So what you are looking at when you want to create objects, that's what a class is. A blueprint is something you look at when you want to create something. So a class is a blueprint for creating what? Objects. That's what class is. Blueprint for creating objects. But what is an object? An object, like I've been explaining to you, is actually anything that you can create in Python. Anything, any code you can write, a complete code you can write to create something. So an object has what we call properties. Every object must have properties and functions. So you can also call these functions methods. So methods is another word for function, in case if you hear methods. So a class is a blueprint for creating an object, and an object is anything, any code, any software you create, any part of a software you create that has properties and methods. So somebody is going to ask you, what is object-oriented programming? You should be able to tell the person what object-oriented programming means. It simply means that in programming or in writing your code, you're doing it, seeing the code or the program as an object that has properties and functions. of properties and methods. So that is what OOP, object-oriented programming, is. So I can now say that almost everything in Python is an object. And that's why we say that is why Python is an object-oriented programming language. So Python is an object-oriented programming language. And that is what was called what? OOP. Whenever you hear OOP, know that is what it means. So quickly, we are going to start immediately. I'm going to start immediately by creating a class. So let's create this blueprint from which we are going to be creating our object. So class. So let's create a class. We are going to call this class student. So that is the class students. You can see the way I wrote my students. It starts with a capital letter. My student starts with a capital letter. The class student that I'm creating is starting with a capital letter. Okay, I hope you can still see it clearly. Is this still clear? Good. So class student. For you to create a class, you can use a constructor. And I'm going to be telling us what a constructor is. So a constructor is actually a method or a function that helps the class to do what we call initialize the arguments, the properties. Use it to initialize the arguments that are going to be used in this class. Very, very important when you're creating a class that you start up with a constructor. So how do you create this function or this method called constructor? You know that to create a function in JavaScript, you must use what? The keyword what? Def, isn't it? But if it is a constructor, it must have double underscore and have what? Init, and followed by another double underscore. So whenever you have a function called init double underscore, that function is known as a constructor. So it takes the argument of self, first of all. Then after taking self as an argument, it now takes all the properties that you want to initialize. And those properties are, for this very class of students, we are going to be having their names of the students. We are going to be having the emails of the students. And we're going to be having the ages of the students. So put your normal colon. That is what we call a constructor. Then inside it, you're now going to say self dot each of the properties. Say self dot name equal to, you give the initial name, which is name. So we say name, self dot name equal to name. So this is the procedure for doing this. Make sure you just take note of it. Then we also say self dot, what's the next property there? Email. Self dot email equal to what? Email. Then finally, we look at what? Self dot, what is the last age equal to age. So with that, we can say that we've been able to create that very constructor. So the next thing we can now do is that we can now create the various other methods or other functions that this class student can do. So let's create a function and call this function greeting. A student should be able to come into the class and greet the fellow students. So if I'm not having any other attribute or property, I'm going to just put self, then put the normal colon, and then write out what I want this function greeting to do. So what do I want it to do? I want it to return in F string and say, I am a student with name. I'm a student with name. Then I'm gonna put in the name, and the name is gonna be self.name. That is the name. I'm a student with name, self.name. And I am how many years old? How old are you? So I'm simply gonna put what? Self.age. You already know what self.name and self.age is. So with that, I've created this other function. So I can also create another function, not just one function that the class you have. Can have as many functions as possible. So let me create another function by saying def, and this function is gonna add up 1 year to my age. So I'm gonna call it def has birthday. That's the name of the function. So it's gonna just take in only self. And what is it gonna do? It's simply gonna add up 1 year, 1 more year to my age. So if they say self.age, and I simply say plus equal to, like we did before when we are doing the other thing, equal to 1. So it's adding up 1 year to my initial age, so the current age that I'm having. So if I have this, I can simply create an object and run this. So we say that an object is created from the class. So let me create a given object. So how do I do that? So I can simply say create an object of class what? What's the name of our class? Student. So let me create one student now and see how it works. So who should I create? Let me create Fortune. Do we create you? Let me create you from this student because you are a student. So to create Fortune, we'll simply say what? Mention the name Fortune equal to, and we'll now say what's the name of our class? Student, isn't it? So what we do in brackets, we are gonna do what? Put in the various properties. So the number one property we are looking at is the name. So Fortune, what's your full name? Onyekwere. Onyekwere Fortune. Good. So what's your age? What I'm putting here is just as we declared. What's your email? I mean, email first. Okay. Onyekwere Fortune what? 1 at gmail.com. So make sure that you put it in single quote. Make sure it's in single quote, single or double quote. So what's the last property that we have to put? Class, help me out. What last property? Age. Good. So what's your age, Fortune? 21. So we've created an object of the class student, which is actually Fortune. So now with that, we can actually perform any function. So we can perform the function of greeting, and we can also manipulate anything about Fortune. So that's how you create a function from you create an object from a class. But before we go on to run this or to print out something from this, I want to tell us other things that we can do. Whose phone is doing that? I want to tell us other things that we can do from a class. We can actually extend. We can have a bigger class and extend some things from that class to a lesser class, you understand? And there's what we call inheritance in object-oriented programming. So we're going to be looking at that. So we're going to create another class, but we want that class to inherit from students. Exactly. So let's create that class. And here we are going to be learning what we call extend. We want to learn how to extend a class from another class. So we want to create a new class, but extend from our student, because we want this new class to have all the properties and functions that are already in students. You understand? But we cannot add up more functions to it. So in this extend, we are learning what we call, what concept are we learning? What concept in our object-oriented programming are we learning? We are learning what we call inheritance. We are learning what we call what? Inheritance. So let's practice that. So let's do that by creating another class. So we are going to create class, and this class is going to be what? Monitor. Class, what do they call the head person in the class? Some people call monitor, some people say class rep, is it not? Isn't it? Or students rep. So let me call it, since I'm having students already, let me call it student what? Underscore what? Rep. That means the head person in the class. You can also say student, then in capital letter for the rep. Is that clear? So that is it. So please make sure that this my student that I created here, I did not put colon in front. So make sure you put colon. Very, very important for that class. So the same way, when you say student rep, the class name is student rep. But now I want it to inherit from students. So how do I do that? If you want it to inherit, you simply put a bracket. You understand? Then you now state what you want it to inherit from. And that is what are we inheriting from? Students, isn't it? So that is how you write that. Then make sure that you put your word colon in front once you're done. Are we together on this? Is this still clear? Good. So now when we now come down, we'll now put, just like normal way, when you want to create a class, there has to be a what? There has to be a what? Constructor. And I say that the constructor is the function that must be called, the initial function that must be called in a class. Very, very important, because it helps to initialize and get things done before that other functions can be performed. So how do you create a constructor? By saying def what? Double underscore what? In it, isn't it? And you put another double underscore. That's how you do that. And you now put a bracket. Then inside the bracket, what and what are you bringing in? Self, name, all the properties, but email, and what? Age, isn't it? So once you're done, make sure you also put your what? Colon. I hope I put colon in the book. I put it. So make sure you also put your colon. So what's the next thing you do? You now assign them their initial value. So you say self dot what? What's the first one? Self dot name equal to what? Name, isn't it? And the second one is what? Self dot email equal to email. And the third one is what? Self dot age, and it's equal to what? Age, isn't it? Now we want to now introduce, because now we are inheriting all these name, email, and age from the class student. So what new thing? Why are we creating if they are the same, then there's no need for creating this other class extending from email. But we want to bring in a new thing that only student reps should have. And that is going to be balanced. That is going to be what? We want to know for all the students rep, what balance, what are they owing the school? What balance do they have? So we're going to create this function. So we say balance equal to what? 0. Let's initialize balance to 0. So let's create a function that we use this balance. So we simply say def, and we'll say set balance. So that's the function. This function is going to use that balance attribute. So self balance, then in brackets, we are going to put, it's always going to take self as an argument, and it's going to take now balance, since we declared balance as one of the attributes. So we also put our colon, very, very important. Don't forget your colon. So we're going to say self dot balance is equal to balance. So this function is going to set our balance. Self.balance equal to, why am I having double N? Okay, see, it's helping me complete the code because initially I made mistake in the spelling of my balance. So the extensions that I'm having is too strong. Balance. I hope that's the spelling of balance. Is that the spelling of balance? Okay. So that is balance. So I can also override the greeting function that I have in the parent class. So how do I do that? I simply create another function and give it the same name, greeting. So if you create a new function in the new class that you have and you name it the same thing, it's going to override the function that you had initially. So this is going to take an attribute argument of self as well. Then what do we want it to do? It has to do a different thing from the initial greeting that we have because it wants to overwrite it. So what does it do? It's going to return. But this time around, it's returning an F string just like we've been using. We like using F string because it's better. So I'm going to return I am the class rep with name. I am the class rep with name. Then I now put what? Self dot name. That is the variable name. I'm the class rep with name self dot name, and I am how many years old? That is self dot age, isn't it? Then what else do I want to bring in? I can also say and my balance is. So I can now say and my balance is. So what is my balance? My balance is self dot balance. So that's the last thing I have. So once you have this, you're good to go because you've overwritten this greeting function. There's already a greeting function in the parent class, but I've overwritten it with another thing here. So if I run for student rep, this is the greeting function that will be performed, not the initial function. So let's practicalize this. We've already tried to practicalize this by creating what? A student. You can see the student here. Huh? So let me quickly copy this so that I can run them once. I'm going to cut this out from here. Then I'm going to come down here and paste it. So this is object of class student. But I also want to have another object, but this time around, not of class student, but class what? Which class? Student rep, Abby? So let me have another object. Let me create this student rep that I talked about. So it's going to be our class rep. Our class rep, let's make Joshua our class rep. So we'll have Joshua. So inside here, what am I going to write? Is this student or student rep? It's going to be student what? Rep, isn't it? Because that's what Joshua is, student rep. So it's actually student rep. I didn't put S. So make sure you're not making any mistake. So student rep. So Joshua, what is your name? Full name? Ndobu Eze. Ndobu Eze. Ndobu Eze who? Joshua. That's his full name. Joshua, what's your email? Huh? Josh Eze 58 at Gmail or Yahoo at gmail.com. So what's your age? 20. Well, we are going to add one last thing back. Which is balance, but balance has been initialized as 0 here. So let's now, since we've created the two objects of the two classes, both for the parent class, which is student, and for the class that student was extended to, which is student rep, let's perform some operations and see how they go. So let's say now we give Joshua, let's give Joshua something. So let's say Joshua dot set balance. You remember the set balance function that we wrote? So Joshua dot set balance. Yeah, let's set the balance of Joshua to something. So let's set Joshua's balance to 800. So once we do that, let's now print out something about Joshua. So let's say print. What do we print? Let's print Joshua dot greeting. Let's Joshua perform this function of greeting. Let's see what it looks like. So let's do Joshua dot greeting. So I'm going to save this, Control S, and I'm going to run this. So how do we run this file now? Okay. Python space what? Python space OOP. We'll just name it only OOP, but OOP.py. Okay, it's telling me count open file Python. Error, no such file. OOP.py, no such file. Why? Okay, I wrote Python 2 times. So I have to just say Python space OOP.py. Okay. So it's telling me that I have an error. Somebody should know where that error is. Under hasbat, I didn't put a colon. So let's go back to there. This is hasbat. I didn't put a colon there, so I'll put it now, colon. So I save back and go and run again. So let me run it again. So if I run again, it should work. So you can see the greeting is performing. I am the class rep with the name Ndubeze Joshua, and I am 20, and my balance is 800. You can see it inherited everything that was in student and still added up the 800. So that is how you go about that. Tomorrow, when we'll be learning TK Enter, we're going to find out that everything we'll be creating will be in form of a class. We are going to be creating, TK Enter is a library that we can use to create GUI, graphical user interface. We are going to be using it to build calculators, build many things. Even the final project that we'll have for this course, which is inventory, we're going to be building it using TK Enter library. And tomorrow, that's what we're going to be looking at. So what we'll be using TK Enter to build, we are going to be importing some models from TK Enter, and we're going to be using the object-oriented programming way of writing code to do that. So you must know this. Object-oriented programming is very, very simple. You have to, first of all, declare the class, and inside the class, you must have the word constructor that initializes the various properties. Then these properties are going to be used to perform functions. So these are the properties: name, email, and age. You can see in the function of greeting, greeting is using a property name, and it's also using age to work. So that's why you must declare the properties, because they will be used in performing the function. Another function is hard underscore birthday. It's using the property age to work. So that is how a human being works, and that's why we say that object-oriented programming sees everything like an object. And a human being like me is an object, and I have my mouth. But if I want to perform the function of talking, I have to use my mouth, which is my property, to talk. If you're building bigger softwares like ATM, what are the properties that you are supposed to identify in an ATM? Account number, isn't it? And what other property? You have to know the person's account number, because with the account number, that's when you can withdraw. The function there is withdraw. But if you don't know the account number, do you know the account to withdraw from? You need to know the account number. You need to know the balance so that you can withdraw or deposit. You understand? Withdrawal is a function. Deposit is a function. You understand? But the ATM PIN, account number, all those things are properties of that person's account. You understand? So if you're going to be building a software for ATM, you're going to build it in form of a class. So you say class ATM. You understand? Then you say def init self. Then you bring in the properties of ATM, the account number of the person, isn't it? Account name and all those things. You can even put bank name. Then under functions, what kind of functions will you? Then once you finish putting it in the init, you are going to say self.account name equals to, you put the person's account name, self.email, the person, all the credentials of that person. You understand? Then what are the functions that you'll be declaring there? Function like deposit, withdrawal. And for you to deposit, you must say, check first whether this is the person putting has the right ATM pin, is it not? Then check whether he has the right amount of balance inside his account, isn't it? Before you now withdraw. The same thing with deposit. You understand? So that is where we are going to be using all these object-oriented programming, including when we'll be writing our inventory. We're going to find out that an inventory should have what? Stock, name of the product. Is that clear? Stock, name of the product, and many other things. That is what we are going to be doing tomorrow. So by tomorrow morning, we will be looking at TK enter in the morning. If we have any questions, we can ask there and we can continue. Any little questions now?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, plenty questions. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
To my class student rep. Okay, this is the class student rep. Okay. An error there. Other people be warming up your question. When Onyeko finishes, you can ask your question.
Please, sir, can you scroll down, sir?
Okay. Who is asking now? Who is talking?
Ola, sir.
Ola, okay. Ola wants me to scroll down very well, okay? Okay, I think Ola wants to see everything that I've typed. So anybody with question? I'm not going to sign off immediately. I'm going to give you guys time to type out everything. Or should I increase my screen back? Should I increase my screen? So, okay, let me put mine in full mode so that you can see.
Yes, sir, please do.
Okay. So, this is the first part. A class is a blueprint for creating objects. An object has properties and methods or functions associated with it. Almost everything in Python is an object. That's how Python does work. If you want to be creating models and other things, create them as objects. That's the best way to create to write your software. Use object-oriented programming. So we say that almost everything in Python is an object. That's why Python is an object-oriented programming language. OOP. You have to be conversant with that word. OOP simply means object-oriented programming.
And that has been the approach of the United States, always pursuing peace, which means peace and quiet.
Somebody is playing TV on his background. Ola, I think it should be you because you are the only person unmuted. Okay, thank you very much. So let me give you guys time to finish up. You can see this code is very clean. If you are wondering why my code, for my class name, everything is written in different ways and it's so neat and well organized. I'm using Prettier. I'm using bracket pair colorizer, and I want you to install all those. I'm also using a whole lot of other extensions that I did not tell you guys to install in the first class, because I've been using VS Code to code JavaScript and many other things. I've been using this very VS Code to do React and Node.js, Express.js. So I've installed a whole lot of extensions, and that is why you can see my codes written in good colors, and they are well done. But if you install these basic ones, bracket pair colorizer and your Prettier, I think they are going to do good work for you, making your code look good and readable. So to create a class, you simply say class.
Hello.
The name of a class must start in capital letter. Okay, Remy, wait, finish. Let me just finish explaining. The name of the class must start in capital letter. Then put your colon. Then define your constructor. Constructor starts with what? Just the name of normal function or method. Because construction is a special type. Constructor is a special type of method that gets called whenever you want to instantiate an object. So you must start it with underscore, double underscore, init double underscore. and the argument takes in self before the other properties. And the properties that we are including for this very software are name, email, and age. So you now initialize them by saying self.name equal to name, self.email equal to email, just like that. Then you can now, after writing the constructor function, that's when you can now write other custom functions that you want your class to have. So after creating your class, that's when you now create an object. But you can also create another class that extends from the initial class, the parent class, and that is done if you want to inherit all the properties and some functions. So you can see that in this extended class of student rep, because we know that a student rep is already a student, isn't it? A student rep has to be a student. That's why it's inheriting from student, because a student rep also has name, email, age, isn't it? It's only that that student rep will have one function that other people don't have. And that function might be to getting access to the lecturer, isn't it? So in this case, what are we putting as getting access to the lecturer? Set balance. That's what we are putting there, isn't it? That's the only special function that student rep has that the other one is not having. So when we are done creating the classes, what we now create is the object. So we say that object is the blueprint from which the class is created. So the object is simply, you just give it a variable name and now state that class where it is being created from, the blueprint from where it is created from. In this case, is student. Then put all those properties, the real actual properties. That is all. So once you're able to do that, you can see I created the object of student, which is Fortune, an object of class student rep, which is Joshua. So with that, I can make calls to this object by simply saying Joshua dot set balance. I can say Joshua dot greeting. If I print it out, I will see the impact. So Remy, you want to ask a question? Okay, Remy is no longer asking question again. Maybe I've explained everything very well. So I'm going to be signing off. Remember that everything you want is in Christ Jesus, and that the surest way to get into success is by being a born again. Thank you. God bless you. See you tomorrow. TK Enter and our project, which is an inventory for stores. So after creating that inventory, you should be able to go and sell your inventory to stores and supermarkets. In the next Python class, we are going to be looking at Django, how to create web applications using Django, create REST API using Django. That's what we are doing in 2.0. That is, by this time around next month, we are repeating all these classes again. So the 2.0 of our Python class will be on Django, how to do web application using Django. Thank you. God bless you. See you tomorrow. Remain blessed. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, I'm signing off.
Please, sir, I don't know if I can ask you a question.
Who is asking questions? Is it Ola?
Yes.
Make it very fast, but I might just sign off and answer you later. But let me get your question.
Okay. Oh, I don't know. I'm having a problem in the very constructor def underscore in it underscore. Like it's giving me. Are we not to column it after defining it?
You have to put column.
But it's pointing at the column as error.
Okay. What you just replay this video and check through. Maybe there's a mistake somewhere.
How can I replay the video?
Okay. It's on my Facebook. Just go to Facebook and send me a friend request. My name is Augustine Ekene Emeka.
Okay. All right.
Play it from there to see everything. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.